She walked into the boardroom on a Tuesday morning wearing a charcoal suit that had not come from the kind of store she used to know the name of. And every person in the room stood up. Every person except one. Dante Reyes stayed in his chair at the head of the table and looked at her the way you look at something you have been expecting and not expecting simultaneously, with the specific stillness of a man whose body has recognized something before his mind has finished catching up. He had been running this meeting for 40 minutes. He did not finish the sentence he had been in the middle of. She set her briefcase on the table. She sat down at the opposite end. Article 9, she said, of the Castellano Trust Deed, dated 11 years ago, signed by your grandfather and witnessed by 2 people, one of whom is me, transfers controlling interest in all Reyes Holdings subsidiaries to the named secondary trustee upon 5 years of documented operational stewardship. I have been the named secondary trustee since I was 26 years old. She opened the briefcase, slid a document down the length of the table. I have been in documented operational stewardship for 5 years, 2 months, and 4 days. She looked at him. Good morning, Dante. What none of the people in that room had known, until this moment, what Dante Reyes himself had not known, which was the point, which had always been the point, was that the woman who had cleaned his family's estate for 3 years and then disappeared without a word had not disappeared at all. She had been working. Her name was Camila Reyes, born Camila Ortega, renamed by a courthouse in Nevada 14 months after she left the Reyes estate, a legal procedure that had cost her $412 and had been the most expensive thing she'd done in the first year of being gone. She was 31 now. She had been 23 when she started cleaning the east wing of the estate in Pasadena, 24 when Dante Reyes's grandfather pulled her aside after a Tuesday morning and told her she had a quality he had been looking for a long time and that he needed her to listen carefully to what he was about to say. She had listened. What Ernesto Reyes had said, over the course of 3 conversations across 3 Tuesday mornings in the library of his family's estate, was this: he had built something that would not survive his grandson without help, and his grandson would not accept help he could see, and therefore the help had to be invisible. He needed someone to learn the architecture of everything he had built, the trusts, the subsidiaries, the vendor relationships, the legal structures, and to do it quietly, without anyone knowing, and to be ready to use that knowledge at a specific moment he would designate in the paperwork. He had named her secondary trustee 11 years ago. He had died 8 years ago. He had not told Dante. She had spent the 3 years after his death cleaning the East Wing and learning everything she could learn from the inside of the organization, the way the subsidiaries connected, the vulnerabilities in the holding structure, the places where Dante's instincts were good, and the places where they were going to cost him something eventually. She had spent those 3 years making herself invisible in the particular way of domestic staff, which is the most effective kind of invisibility there is, because no one thinks the person cleaning the baseboard is memorizing the conversation happening above her head. Then she had left. She'd given notice on a Thursday, cleaned the East Wing one last time on a Friday, and driven to Nevada by Saturday morning. She'd had 5 years of work to do, and she needed to not be anyone's maid while she did it. The estate in Pasadena had 18 rooms and a formal garden that needed 3 people to maintain, and a kitchen that Camila had kept stocked according to a master list she'd built in month 2 and refined for 3 years. Because waste was a form of carelessness, and she did not have the luxury of carelessness. She had a room off the utility corridor, small, with a window that faced the back garden, and she had used the window to orient herself geographically every morning while she drank her coffee, the way her mother had taught her to always know which direction was north. She had known from her first week that the estate was not the center of what she was inside. It was a surface. Below the surface was a structure that Ernesto Reyes had spent 40 years building, piece by piece, in the patient way of someone who intends to last. 11 subsidiaries, 4 holding companies, 2 trusts, and a network of vendor relationships that functioned as both legitimate business and something less categorizable. She had learned the legitimate parts first, because those were easier to see. She had learned the rest by listening, and by being the kind of person who is in the room when things happen, and does not appear to be paying attention. Dante Reyes had been 28 when she arrived. He had been managing the day-to-day of Reyes Holdings for 2 years by then, since his grandfather's first health episode, and he had been doing it with the particular intensity of someone who has inherited something enormous and is not yet sure they are large enough to hold it. She had watched him from the East Wing, through doorways, through the specific way the staff reorganized themselves when he walked into a space. Through the phone calls she caught fragments of when she was replacing linens on the 2nd floor and the study door was open. He was good at the things he had been taught. He was dangerous in the places he hadn't been. The 3rd Tuesday morning library conversation, Ernesto Reyes had said, "He will learn. But the learning will cost him things I cannot afford to let him lose. What I'm building with you is a floor beneath him. He will not know it's there until he needs it. By then, you will know whether to let him stand on it." She had not known, at 26, exactly what he meant. She understood it better now. The car she drove to Nevada was a 2009 Honda Civic with a check engine light that had been on for 8 months that she had kept meaning to fix. She fixed it at a garage in Barstow because she needed the car to make it, and she did not intend to need rescuing on the side of the I-15. She arrived in Las Vegas at 2 in the morning, checked into a motel, and lay on the bed with the lights off, and thought about which direction was north and what came next. What came next was 5 years of work. She had a list. She had known when she left that Dante Reyes would notice her absence in one of 2 ways. Practically, because good household staff is harder to replace than people assume, or personally, in some way she had not allowed herself to examine too carefully while she was still in the East Wing. She had prepared for the practical version. She had left a household manual, 42 pages, organized by room and by day of week, with vendor contacts and inventory thresholds, and the specific note that the 2nd floor thermostat ran 2 degrees cold and should always be set higher than the target temperature. She had left it in the utility closet where her replacement would find it. She had not prepared a version of leaving for the other possibility, because she had been in the East Wing for 3 years and had maintained, with great consistency, a policy of not knowing certain things about herself. The courthouse in Nevada had given her a new last name. She had chosen Reyes because Ernesto had given her something, and she intended to honor it, and because carrying the name while no one knew she carried it felt like the right kind of promise. She had then spent 14 months building the infrastructure for the next 4 years, a legal entity in Delaware, a financial management certification from an institution in Chicago that ran its program online, 3 consulting contracts that gave her documented experience in operational stewardship of holding structures. She worked 17-hour days for the first year because there was no other speed for what she was doing, and because the work was the thing keeping her from examining the other possibility, the one she had not prepared for. She had checked on the estate twice in 5 years, both times from a car parked 3 blocks away, which she recognized as the behavior of someone who has a policy of not knowing certain things about herself and is not fully honoring it. Both times, the lights in the East Wing had been on at the time of day she used to work there. She had driven away both times without stopping. The boardroom on the 41st floor of the Reyes Holdings building in downtown Los Angeles had a view she had never seen from this angle. She had seen the building from the street. She had been to 4 meetings on the lower floors in the last 8 months, under a different name, as a representative of the Delaware entity that held the secondary trust interest. She had chosen the lower floors deliberately. She had been building toward the 41st. The document that slid down the table was 37 pages. She had drafted it with 3 lawyers across 2 years and had it reviewed by a 4th who specialized specifically in family trust litigation. It was correct. It would hold. She had made sure of everything twice, because Ernesto Reyes had taught her that the second check was not redundancy. It was the thing that made the first one worth anything. Dante read the first page. He read it the way she remembered him reading things in the study, completely still, one hand flat on the table, the quality of attention that meant he was not performing reading but actually doing it. She had not let herself think about the details of how he read things. She was thinking about it now. He reached the 3rd page. He stopped. He looked at her across the 30 feet of mahogany table. "Camila," he said. "Not Miss Reyes, not the name on the document. Her first name." In the specific way of someone who has said a name in their head many times and is surprised by how it sounds out loud. "Yes," she said. "You've been the secondary trustee since you were 26. "Yes, my grandfather." He stopped. Started again. "He told you, and not me. He told me you would need the floor before you knew you needed it," she said. "He asked me to watch until I knew, and then to come." The room was very quiet. The 11 people who were not Dante Reyes or Camila Ortega, now Reyes, had the specific stillness of people who understand they are in a room where something larger than them is happening and have correctly decided that the right behavior is to be as small as possible. "You left," Dante said. "I had to. I couldn't build what needed to be built from the East Wing." She paused. "I left you the manual." Something moved through his expression, a compression, fast and controlled, that she recognized as the thing he did instead of whatever the uncontrolled version would have been. "The manual," he said. 42 pages. Utility closet, top shelf, behind the spare linens. He looked at her for a long moment. "The thermostat on the 2nd floor still runs cold," he said. "I've been setting it higher than the target temperature for 5 years." She looked at him across the mahogany. "I know," she said. The meeting adjourned at 12:40. The 11 people left in the particular organized silence of people who have been professionally trained not to react to things in real time. The door closed. It was the 2 of them and the 37-page document and the view of downtown from the 41st floor, and Camila Reyes had prepared for many versions of this moment and had not, in any of them, accounted for the specific quality of being in the same room as him again after 5 years with nowhere else to look. "Why Article 9?" he said. It wasn't a question about the legal mechanism. She understood this. "Because it was the right instrument," she said. "Because Ernesto built it to protect the organization at a specific moment, and the moment is now." He stood up. He walked to the window. She recognized this. He had always thought better on his feet, near glass, with a view of something larger than the room. "What's happening?" he said. She had prepared this part. "The Meridian subsidiary is being approached for a hostile acquisition. The approaching entity has been building a minority stake position through nominee shareholders for 14 months. They have 22%. The threshold for forcing a board vote is 25. They need 3 more percent. She paused. "They have identified a seller. The seller is a member of your current board." He turned from the window. "Visquez," she said. "He's been in contact with the acquiring entity for 8 months. He's agreed in principle. The transfer hasn't happened yet because the acquirer is waiting for documentation that Vasquez doesn't know he can't actually provide. What documentation? The Castellano Trust controls a blocking interest in Meridian, she said. Any acquisition above 15% requires secondary trustee approval. She held up one hand. That's me. I have not approved. I will not approve. The acquisition cannot proceed. She lowered her hand. Vasquez will find this out when the acquirer's lawyers call him tomorrow morning, at which point his value to them evaporates and his exposure to you becomes visible. Dante was looking at her with an expression she did not have a word for yet. You've known about Vasquez for 8 months, he said. I've been documenting it for 8 months. There's a full file. She opened the briefcase again, slid a second document across the table, thinner 40 pages, tabbed, emails, transfer records, 2 meetings captured on audio in locations where recording is legally permitted. Everything admissible. He didn't pick it up immediately. He looked at it. Then he looked at her. You came back because of Vasquez, he said. She was quiet for a moment. I came back because it was time, she said. Vasquez is the reason the timing is now and not in 6 months. There's a difference. Yes, he picked up the file. He read. She watched him read and thought about the direction of north and the 2009 Civic and the motel in Las Vegas and 17-hour days and a window facing a back garden and a person who had a policy of not knowing certain things about themselves and had not, in 5 years, managed to stop checking. Camila, he said, without looking up. Yes, the last entry in the household manual, he said. Page 42. There was a note at the bottom. Not about the inventory, not about the thermostat. He looked up. I've read it a number of times. Her hands were still on the table. She did not look at them. I know what it said. Tell me what it meant. She thought about Ernesto Reyes in the library on a Tuesday morning, saying, he will learn. By then, you will know whether to let him stand on it. She thought about what she had known, and when, and the policy she had maintained about knowing it, and what 5 years of honoring that policy had cost her and not cost her. It meant I wasn't leaving because I wanted to, she said. It meant I was leaving because it was the only way to do what needed to be done. And it meant I intended to come back. She paused. I don't make promises I don't keep. He looked at her across the 40 pages of the Vasquez file. Neither did he said. My grandfather. I know, she said. That's why I listened. What happened to Vasquez was quiet, as these things tend to be when they are handled correctly. The acquiring entity's lawyers called him at 9:15 Thursday morning, as Camila had predicted, and delivered the news about the blocking interest in language that was professionally neutral and absolutely devastating. Vasquez spent 40 minutes making calls that were not returned. He then received a message from Dante Reyes's office requesting his presence at a meeting on Friday morning that he understood from the subject line and the tone and the specific identity of the person who had sent it was not the kind of meeting you declined. The Friday meeting lasted 12 minutes. Vasquez resigned from the board in writing before noon. The terms of his departure were structured by legal counsel in a way that made certain information permanently unavailable to the acquiring entity, which made the acquisition structurally impossible, which ended the matter. The acquiring entity filed a complaint with the SEC 3 weeks later that was reviewed and closed in 8 days because the Castellano Trust blocking interest was a matter of public record and had been since Ernesto Reyes filed it 11 years ago, and anyone who had done the legal due diligence would have known it. The complaint was the filing of a party that had not done the due diligence. The SEC noted this. Camila read the closure letter on a Thursday morning in the office that had been prepared for her on the 38th floor, 3 floors below the boardroom, which she had chosen herself because she did not need the view, She needed the work, and she put it in the permanent file and closed the drawer and went back to the Meridian subsidiary integration she had been building for 2 months. The work was not small. 11 subsidiaries, 4 holding companies, 2 trusts. 37 pages of Article 9 had given her the authority. The authority was only as good as what she built with it. She had learned this from Ernesto, and she intended to honor it. And she had approximately 11 years of building ahead of her if she wanted to leave things the way he had left them, better than he had found them, and structured to outlast her. She started with the Meridian integration. She worked until 7. She went home to the apartment in Silver Lake that she had moved into 6 weeks ago, the first apartment she had taken under her own name in 5 years, and made dinner and sat at the kitchen table facing north and thought about what was next. Her phone buzzed, a text from Dante, the thermostat on the 2nd floor. I finally had it calibrated. She looked at this for a long time. She typed, "How long did that take?" His reply, 5 years. Turned out the sensor was correct. I was just setting it wrong. She sat at the kitchen table in the Silver Lake apartment and thought about what it meant when a man who learned things slowly learned them completely, and kept the household manual for 5 years and read page 42 a number of times and calibrated the thermostat. She typed, "The Meridian integration has a structural gap in the Q4 routing. I'd like to walk you through it." His reply came in 30 seconds. When? She typed, "Monday. My office, not the boardroom." His reply, "Monday." She put the phone down. She finished her dinner. She looked at the kitchen window. The Silver Lake apartment faced west, which meant she couldn't use it to orient herself by the morning light the way she had used the estate window. But she had learned in 5 years that orientation was less about the direction you were facing and more about knowing what you were moving toward. She knew what she was moving toward. She had known for some time. She had a policy about it. And the policy, she had decided, was over. Monday was her office, as agreed. He came at 9, not 10:15. She noticed. She didn't mention it. The Meridian integration was on the desk between them. Real work. The kind that needed 2 people who understood the structure and trusted each other's reading of it. And they worked for 2 hours with the specific efficiency of people who have spent a long time learning how the other one thinks, and are now, for the first time, allowed to use it directly. At the end of it, when the routing gap was closed and the coffee had gone cold, he said, "I need to ask you something." She waited. "When you were in the East Wing," he said. "The 3 years. Did you know then?" She understood the question. She looked at the closed integration file. "Yes," she said. "That's why I left. It's harder to do the work you need to do from inside a feeling you're not supposed to have." He was quiet for a moment. "You named yourself Reyes." "Yes, before any of this. Before Article 9 was relevant. Before you came back." "Yes, why?" She thought about Ernesto in the library, and the direction of north, and the motel in Las Vegas, and the car parked 3 blocks from the estate twice in 5 years, and the lights in the East Wing on at the time she used to work there. "Because he gave me something," she said. "And because I intended to come back to it. And because carrying the name while I worked felt like the right way to hold the promise." He looked at her across the desk. Not the careful expression. Not the study expression. Something she had not catalogued because she had not allowed herself to look for it. "I read page 42 every time I thought you weren't coming back," he said. "How many times was that?" "More than I'd like to tell you right now." She thought about that. About what it cost a man like him to say, "More than I'd like to tell you," instead of the number, and what it would cost him to eventually say the number, and whether she would be there when he did. She would be there. The Q4 gap is closed, she said. But there's a secondary issue in the Meridian vendor contracts, a clause in the renewal terms that's going to create a problem in 18 months if we don't restructure it now. Show me, he said. She opened the file. He moved his chair to her side of the desk. They worked. The morning light came through the west, facing windows of her office at the angle that meant it was close to 11. Below them, 38 floors down, the city ran through its Monday. Continuous, unhurried, the kind of thing that keeps happening while you are building something above it. She had been building for 5 years. She looked at the vendor clause. She looked at him reading beside her. She was still building. It felt, now, like the right kind of floor. Camila spent 5 years learning everything Ernesto built. But there's one structure in the trust deed she hasn't told Dante about yet. Not because it's a threat. Because it's a gift. And she's waiting to see if he finds it himself first. Tell me in the comments, do you think he already knows? And when did you know she was coming back? Was it the motel in Las Vegas or the lights in the East Wing? I read every one. If this is the kind of story you come here for, the ones where the invisible ones turn out to have been building everything from the beginning, follow along. New story every day. One more thing, Ernesto Reyes named a secondary trustee. He did not name only one. The second name is someone Dante has known his entire life. They've been watching everything that happened in that boardroom on Tuesday morning. They have opinions,